Well, President Obama became the first sitting U.S. president to visit Cuba in 88 years last week. But the president wasn't alone in that trip. Several others went along, including North Dakota Senator Heidi Heitkamp. She talked with Mike Shosey for this week's Sunday Sit Down.
I think we saw a lot over the last 3 or 4 days of the president in Cuba, but we didn't see a lot of the other work that was going on there. Can you tell us about what you were doing?
Well, first off, we met with a lot of people in civil society because one of the reasons why I think we continue to see resistance on lifting the embargo is human rights violations. And so we spent time with people who are working so hard to try and get equality and make sure that everyone has economic opportunity. I got to sit with a young man who has started an organization not to be, aggressive, but to build out support from the grassroots for changes. And amazing people, what they've been able to do in spite of the restrictions. But so it's met up with a lot of people who are working on human rights. We're able to spend some time with the ag community. The Cuba coalition was down in Cuba at the same time, so we met with Vilsack, spent time with Vilsack, met with businessmen, both Cuban businessmen and American businessmen with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and then with Penny Pritzker, put together a number of Cuban Americans who are trying to do business in Cuba or who have no economic interest but want to do everything that they can to normalize these relationships.
And that's the stuff in North Dakota we're really interested in more than some of the other things?
I absolutely think so. There's a couple things that I think were kind of takeaways. And my focus has been primarily not on tourism, but it's been on how can we reestablish trade relationships. The United States used to be 10% of Cuban or 50% of Cuban ag imports. Now we're only 10%. We know that the reason why we're restricted is financing, which is why I introduced the bill that I introduced to try and basically allow for financing of American products being shipped to Cuba, at least private financing. And so it's not a complete lifting of the embargo, but it would go a long way to solving some of the problems that we have in getting agriculture there. We met with Secretary Vilsack after he signed the MOU. There's going to be research and trade collaborations. And he did the one thing that I've been urging for about 2 years now, which is to lift the restraint that we have on checkoff dollars being used for research and for trade. And so that's going to give us a little leg up. And he also told us the importance, and I think it's true, of getting boots on the ground for USDA. They currently don't have any staff that is located with the embassy. That's really unique. I've traveled to American embassies in other countries. There's always someone there from USDA because food is such a big part of our soft power. And so just had a trip, and then just to be part of something historic and being invited along, because I told everybody I kind of got the advantage of all the work that Byron Dorgan did for all those years in trying to normalize relationships, but this has been a top ag priority for me since coming to the Senate.
The last U.S. president to visit Cuba was Calvin Coolidge back in 1920.